calling this marketing that serves. We're looking at things that are in the world of marketing, and yet it does promote financial literacy. Some of the questions we may be asking are, does this make sense for your brand? How would your message work within this? Is this unexpected to the audience? Just to get into a couple of quick examples that I think are sort of the low-hanging fruit. We do a number of this for our clients. So as an example, at Southern Bank, we've worked on infographics for them. I think the next slide is MBKC, where we've been doing a lot more written content and trying to show what the bank's point of view is on a topic. I think a lot of us are in this world already. Is what do we want to talk about? What would be helpful, but also what's our point of view? And then the third example, again, this is all low-hanging fruit. This is another one of our clients, Deserve, which through machine learning offers credit to those who are often overlooked, and through their social feed, they've earned the right to stay in the feeds of college kids by making sure that there's entertaining content, advocacy content, and then with earning that right, then they are able to educate them, right? Because college kids aren't going to follow it if all it is education. So I think this is what a lot of us think about when we talk about educating as content marketing. What we want to show with the rest of this presentation is some more interesting ideas that kind of take that a little bit further.
Mm-hmm. And looking at those, three elements of entertaining, advocacy, and educating, kind of this new source that I couldn't help but mention, I think already 3 times this morning, is TikTok. And the proliferation of financial education that's being shared here has really started to influence the way brands are also formatting their education, knowing that these 15-second quippy videos about untold topics or things that should be illegal not to know about their finances is really catering to younger and minority audiences in a way that feels pressure-free, that they may not know a whole lot about their financial situation. And so I think seeing how we can format in this way is being embraced by a lot of brands here. But again, figuring out how can we suss out the legitimate from the non-legit advice here. And a brand that's doing this really well and speaking directly to this younger audience is Copper Bank. So they're an online bank built specifically for teens. Whereas, you see other, every large bank has a kid's spending card where parents have the power to help them and kind of grow them in their own financial well-being. But we know that the ultimate sign of independence as a teen is not having to listen to your parents and be able to do things on your own. And so Copper is really fun, and a little tongue-in-cheek in how they help teens look at their savings and put it in their lens of how you can, save money by bringing your lunch. Even though that might seem like a really easy way, it's all linked back to not having to ask your parents for more money and feeling like you can handle things on your own bit by bit. And I think the takeaway here really being that that we want to speak to teens and these audiences directly, not to the mouthpiece of their parents. And I really think about independence and how we kind of give examples in their everyday life.
Yeah, and another example, when we start thinking about that youth audience, we love seeing what SmartPath is doing as they're creating curriculum in partnership with elementary and middle school teachers in a way that they're embedding relevant and fun, economic and financial education within the classroom. These are engaging and interactive and easy to use kind of modules for teachers to bring financial literacy and financial education into the curriculum and into scenarios that kids can understand, but also kind of taking a step away from maybe what we would normally expect from children's entertainment and using some of those same characters to ask difficult questions that kids are now getting to practice some of those decisions on what to do if they were faced in a similar situation. We move on to maybe even a little bit of an older audience. A really interesting example of how Ally Bank reached an audience that typically has low levels of trust in banks, but also low levels of financial literacy, was how they approached the video gaming community. The 36 million US adults playing video games, and a large portion of them that are kind of obsessed with this game Animal Crossing. Where other brands that have partnered with Animal Crossing might have seen the brand or the platform as a way to extend their retail space in the virtual world, Ally saw this as a game that was really about saving, investing, and planning for the future. And they created their own island within the game that kind of encouraged users to think about the way they're trading what they would call bells and turnips within the game, which ended up actually being a way to activate these same users in thinking about their own finances and their own the way they're thinking about banking outside of the Animal Crossing multiverse. And now we're frozen. Okay, here we go. Did you guys see that? Yeah. So an interesting way when we start thinking about entertainment and gamification, there's obviously a big trend or craving for thrillers as well as true crime. And what Canadian Bank, Home Equity Bank did was really interesting, where they partnered with a famous gentleman by the name of Frank Abagnale, who's a world famous con man and imposter. He's actually the man behind the best-selling book, Catch Me If You Can, that led to the blockbuster film. And what they realized was 91% of Canadians 55 plus believe they're more vulnerable to scams, and 70% of the general public saw kind of an increase in COVID-related scams during the COVID pandemic. 1 in 3 Canadians 55 plus say they've actually been a victim to a scam. So this was a bank that kind of had to approach a key challenge that their customer audience was dealing with, but they did it in a way that was highly engaging and highly entertaining, almost to a point where you didn't realize this was, branded content. This kind of felt like a Netflix special where you're learning about scams and kind of how they're done from, one of the most famous scam artists in the business. Another interesting example here is with Prudential and their race for retirement 4.01k. Very interesting here in that, Prudential realized that 1 in 3 Americans aren't saving enough for retirement, and that we're seeing 10,000 Americans expected to retire every day for the next 2 decades. This is an issue that affects all generations, from baby boomers all the way down to Gen Z. And so what they wanted to do is create an interesting activation to get people to rethink how they're thinking about retirement. And this is not just for people that are nearing retirement. This engagement was targeted to all generations and people that participate in 5K runs, oftentimes younger folks. But what they did was they created a very experiential way for people to kind of make choices within the moment, where at different checkpoints within the 4.01k race, you were asked questions like, could you save 1% more of your income? Yes or no? Getting people to understand that this is a solvable problem, but also kind of creating that sense of urgency for people to take action, but that action can be incremental and approachable, and not necessarily as intimidating as thinking about retirement might typically feel for a lot of folks.
Yeah. And I think a nice play that, financial wellness is a marathon, not a sprint. So, but as we think about, making financial advice and best practices actionable, it's not always as easy as just running through, a gate at a marathon. And so a lot of people are looking to, they need personal advice, not just looking at best practices that might feel abstract or not really applicable to their situation. So Erin Laurie, who hosts the Broke Millennial podcast, does a really nice job where she invites kind of the average Joe or Jane in for an interview where they talk about their own personal finances and troubleshooting them. And so it's helping kind of expose these pitfalls by example that feels, much more relatable. And also it ties in the themes of, having kids and, love and relationships and things that your bank might not talk about. And then on the opposite end of this too, we're also seeing candid conversations, not just coming from the everyman, but also kind of idealized or, role models. And so Chase and Uninterrupted collaborated together to create Kneading Dough, which is a series that interviews athletes about how they've navigated their financial situation as they grew in their career. And being candid that, it's not just the end goal of having millions, and kind of those troubles they had along the way, to be a little bit more candid about that. And then this also helps in opening up to minority audiences and those who may not be here for finance, but drawn to those big names, and being more receptive to failures and success through that lens. And in addition to advice, it's the part of making it actionable. And something that we've discussed a lot internally is that tools are the best content that you can create. Even in our own keyword search for one of our local banks, a mortgage rate calculator just completely blows other keywords out of the water in terms of search traffic. And same as NerdWallet and Bankrate that really dominate when it comes to different financial calculators like cart payment calculators. But again, while these are very broad, there's an opportunity to become more niche in those calculators and how you can personalize to input, possibly more information about your personal situation to help get people to more pointed recommendations and advice rather than just, large strokes. And it applies both, to consumers and businesses. But here, the B2C Academy kind of takes it one step further beyond just advice and tools, and actually creates a free course curriculum that they promote via their YouTube videos, where they kind of do very specific topics and then tee up that course that people can do. I think the takeaway here is that there's a lot of structure, and it provides guidance where they aren't just searching through your library of content. They know the exact next steps to take, so they're getting a holistic education that they can take away, feeling good about. And then on the other side of this is the small business version too. We know that a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses don't, start their business as, a financial pro, and they need help along the way. And so doing that in a way that feels manageable among managing their actual business, and with that isn't condescending either. And Cabbage University also does a nice job of creating that curriculum that works within business owners' cash flow and their current predicament to help with everything from, oh my gosh, the balance in the books to marketing tips. And then we talked earlier about the gig economy, and Indy is an industry bank that is catered fully to the gig economy worker, and helping them kind of manage that different streams of income, whether it's from Instacart or Uber, and manage it in a way that helps them set up portions for their retirement, and other ways to invest, and think about how they can set aside for their own health insurance, and think about how they can manage their finances holistically without the structure of a traditional employer.
So we've talked about a lot of examples here that, look at all types of different users and consumers from different age groups, and from, the B2C context to B2B. But we also wanted to show some examples of maybe some audiences that we don't always think about when we think of financial literacy. And so when we look at the TD Ameritrade example of the Taste of the Futures, they were targeting a highly influential and highly affluent kind of institutional investor. They were trying to make people understand that there's the trading futures is less complicated and less intimidating than it might seem. But this is an audience that, is largely skeptical. They don't have the attention span as you might expect. They are kind of ingrained in their habits and behaviors. And so in order to reach these folks, you had to kind of break it down and make it palatable, little joke there, in bringing it and connecting it to another theme that they had, the audience had a shared passion about, which was fine dining. This brand actually found that their audience was spending up to $10,000 a year in these top-rated restaurants. So they created a video series that actually profiled some of the restaurateurs of those fine dining restaurants, those credible folks that are outside of the financial service space, but people that this audience really did admire and look up to. Again, bringing two passions together to kind of hack a way into getting people to rethink a thing that they actually are professionals in this space, but still had some learning to do in a space that, maybe everyone needs to learn a little bit more about. And another topic that, I think we could all use a little bit more knowledge about is cryptocurrencies. And we love how Coinbase is kind of doing a great job educating their users, even rewarding their users with crypto cash for watching their educational videos and completing quizzes. If you don't know much about this topic, we've got someone on our team that'll talk to you at length about it. So let us know if we want you to make that introduction here. But again, Coinbase doing a great job helping people understand an area that, even myself, I get lost in trying to navigate the crypto conversation that I'm having at happy hour.
What's interesting about, Coinbase too, is that, they're paying people to be involved. Whereas there's the opposite too, where you can create inclusive financial communities that are still kind of members only. That makes it feel, I think, more higher in value in that way. And one that's Ellevest is doing this specifically for women. And it's carving out a space where women can help other women skill up their financial savviness. And they're reframing financial well-being really through the lens of overall personal wellness. And so one of the core facets of this model is personal coaching they can do online. And so members have access to that, but they also do snippets of that coaching in their Instagram stories. So you can get kind of previews of the different counselors that are available. then within that, they also create spaces just for member communities to, take polls and discuss back and forth about different topics. And I think what's really interesting here is that it felt reminiscent of BetterHelp, the online platform that matches patients to counselors. This feels very similar in the way that it's taking a softer and more intuitive and emotionally driven approach to finances, not just because it's for women, but just knowing that, rules in finance aren't always hard and fast.
Now, a topic that we needed to make sure we included in here that deserves maybe an hour in itself is the conversation around equity, representation, and inclusion. So very briefly, we have 3 examples that we really admire. The first one is from Varo, one of the first digital banks in the US, how they really brought the conversation that was already happening in the US around the new face of the $20 bill and built a campaign around democratized dollars where they wanted to show real people on that bill and essentially trying to reimagine money by putting the American consumer, but oftentimes people that are marginalized and underserved by typical banks, putting them at the very core of the symbol of money, our currency itself. Really cool activation that found its way into the media and actually really did have an influence on the conversation around the $20 note. The next one is Ally Bank and their Moguls in the Making campaign, where they were starting a social movement around enhancing diversity and inclusion within the workplace, knowing that the financial service sector overall is needing a bit of a nudge there. Specifically at the highest levels of the organizations. That's where Ally Bank was really looking to make an impact, not just within their own organization, but within the category overall. How can we find minority leaders at the lowest levels? So they partnered with historically Black communities and colleges to create an internship competition where they were really putting their money where their mouths are. And we were able to profile a lot of really unique stories and ultimately bring more diversity to the workforce and to the category. And the last example here is Mastercard's True Name Card. This is a bigger conversation in the category overall about representation in terms of names. And what Mastercard learned was that they have a population of transgender people that I've never been able to show their true name and the gender that actually put their customer at risk, as 32% of their customers, their transgender customers, felt like they were at risk of being harassed or assaulted just by being dead named. They wanted to have a way to showcase their real name on the card, and that's what Mastercard came forward with. What was interesting is Mastercard is not a bank, and there were banks that were kind of skeptical about this. Fast forward, because of the momentum and the conversation around this campaign, they've changed the industry standard, and now many banks are using this card and offer this card in a way where they're being more inclusive to all types of people, but specifically people that needed a different name, which again is changing someone's name can be expensive and time consuming. So it was a necessary step for everyone. And I think this is one of our last examples here, and we wanted to talk about an interesting one that was related to societal impact and philanthropy. And in this example, a brand new VIN partnered with Forbes, and Forbes, one of their most iconic properties is the Forbes 400, the richest 400, wealthiest 400 people in America. And they reinvented the list and recategorized it to make it based on philanthropic giving rather than net worth. What was interesting here is it did have an impact on the general population and how we think about the wealthy and what we aspire to be if we look up to those people and want to see how even young people aspire to be that billionaire on the cover of the Forbes magazine. But what the real activation was built to do was to change the mindset of financial advisors and institutional investors. These are people that have a lot of influence on the rest of the world and the rest of us, but are kind of hardwired to think about earning and extracting value versus creating value. With this re-ranking of the list and this partnership with Forbes, it changed the perspective of a lot of folks within and outside of the industry on how we think about wealth and what we feel like that means in terms of the societal impact and our philanthropic way we need to be thinking about wealth overall.
All right, guys. So we just basically went through an hour of content in about 20 minutes. So it's a little bit like listening to that podcast on double speed. So I cannot believe we got through it at that clip, but what it's afforded us is time to now discuss what we think is interesting. I'm always terrible at intros with our team, but I'd like to just compliment both Greg and Delaney for not only being able to put great content together, but also getting through it at that speed. So again, now this is the good part. This is where we get to hear from you guys and treat this like an actual workshop. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's attended and put ideas forward. I know I've got a few notes based on the conversation. And if you have other ideas, pass them along to us. This is something that we're passionate about. And if you have ideas or see something that's interesting, it might find its way into this deck at the next presentation. So do pass those along. And thanks again for everybody's time.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Enjoy your Thursday, everybody.
Thank you.